And welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, YouTube, as well as the mobile app. He's Howard Cross. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also interact with the two of us on social media using hashtag GiantsChat. He is at Howard Cross87. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. And we are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better as the Giants fell to the Commanders 29-21 at home on Sunday. So we'll provide some takeaways from that front and also look ahead to the next matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. As we knew coming off of the bye, the Giants were going to get 3 of those 4 at home with the Cowboys in the final week. The trip to Las Vegas, the only game away from MetLife Stadium. And unfortunately, Howard, for the Giants, it really was a continuation of the theme we saw against New England, where special teams mishaps came back to bite them. You had the 2 missed field goals. You had the 63-yard return by Jalen Lane. And then also there was a penalty that wiped out a Devin Singletary 30-plus yard run. So once again, we saw it in bits and pieces across the board.
You know, they're having a hard time, like, being consistent. The only thing they're consistent in right now is making mistakes and, little mistakes here and there. And I think it's so hard when you're struggling as a team you've got to pull on everybody. Everybody's got to kind of hang in there. The special teams thing, I just don't understand it. They were a great cover team early in the year. A lot of guys got hurt. They had to mix some guys in and out, and then they kind of got everybody back. Now it seems like almost everybody's back and fully healthy, so they should be picking it up where they left off. And maybe it was the cold that kind of played with them as well. So it's a lot of different things you can blame them. The thing that bothers me most is their ability not to stop the run. It seems like everybody's running on them, and we don't have an answer for it.
And also teams are running on them that also have not had a great success and track record this season, right?
Exactly.
I mean, Washington was not pounding the football this season. Now, they dealt with some injuries, but Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who they call Bill, the rookie running back, late pick, who had actually been phased out a little bit, but Chris Rodriguez was inactive. He ran for 96 yards. He averaged over 5 yards a carry, and then he had that touchdown where it parted like the Red Sea, and he ran up the gut for 16 yards. So I know we've used this term a lot, Howard, but it's almost as if the Giants are becoming the get-right game for a lot of opponents, in fairness. Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, they are the get-right team. The defense seems like they look like they're going to come out. They look like they're fired up, and I don't know. The teams start running at them, and when you start running that team, it kind of takes the wind out of yourselves. And if you can't stop them, and they're running outside, they're running inside, it's like a pick 'em. So they got to find a way to, consistently, be the picket fence, maybe 2 yards, maybe 3 yards, but not 5 yards a pop. You can't do that because every time you run the ball, it's like 2 plays and you're first down. Start it over.
Well, and also you're not putting pressure on, not to say that Marcus Mariota is a young quarterback, he's a veteran, but you'd want him to throw, right? He only threw 19 pass attempts. If you include the sacks, that means he dropped back 21 times in a game that was at least within striking distance late, but I don't think they put enough pressure on Mariota. I'm not talking about sacks. I'm just talking about the flow of the game, Howard, to put it on his shoulders to have to win.
Well, once you're running the ball like that, the play action pass becomes like very easy. He was able to manipulate the linebackers a little bit because everybody had to come up to try to stop the run. And every time they did, he'd stand up, throw the ball. There'd be nobody like within 5 yards of receiver sometime because they're all like up at the line of scrimmage trying to make sure they can get a hand on the running back. And they weren't stopping him anyway, so I'm not really sure how that was working.
And then on top of that, the other thing that has popped up or reared its ugly head is the missed tackling, the Terry McLaurin play, right, over the middle, and then 2 guys in the vicinity, including Dane Belton, and it was a one-on-one opportunity on the safety for McLaurin. He even talked about this after the game, that it was designed to get into that scenario, but you bring them down at least within the 5, make them earn it in the red zone as opposed to getting an explosive touchdown there.
Well, it's like I said, missed tackles, guys are just I don't really have an answer for it. I wish I had an answer for it. I wish I could say, this is what they should be doing, and it would get better. But you just gotta hope that and pray. Each guy has to figure out a way. Like, do you want to be here next year? Because you're getting evaluated through this process, and they're going to have if they're having the pick early in the draft, like in the top 4 or 5 picks, there are going to be a lot of players that they're going to come in here and going to take some jobs.
Everybody's replaceable in the NFL. Howard, you know that very well in terms of your playing days, and that's why, even though it may not be meaningful from a standings perspective, there's going to be a lot of evaluation to determine whether or not these guys will be in the mix next year, or if they have to look and address some of these positions. Now, I want to piggyback over your point about the special teams unit and the fluctuation because of injuries. It's interesting. When Thomas McGahee was the special teams coordinator, Howard, he'd always use the term gumbo. You're making the gumbo every week, right?
Yes,
You're using different ingredients, which I think is a beautiful analogy and holds true to this day. But as you mentioned, they're getting reinforcements back, so you would think continuity would help their cause, though we're not seeing much of that. And even though I would say more of the injuries were on the return front, right? They were down their return guys. What hurt them more in this game was the coverage, more so than the return game.
All it takes is one guy to get blocked, especially, one guy to get blocked. You open, it's kind of, we call it the Red Sea. You split it right there, right down the middle. If you can't, you got to stay in your lanes. You got to be very disciplined about it. If you let a guy get even with you, he's gone. And it's just, I used to be terrified when I used to cover punts and kicks. I'm like, this is not what I want to be doing out here. I don't want to be chasing anybody, so I'm trying to always stay in my lane, make sure the guy's like, okay, I want to run into that big guy. Let's get over there somewhere. So they were trying to protect themselves. But you watch these guys over and over and over again. They look like they're in position, and if you miss and if you throw, and I think that's, again, product of being cold. They're throwing at the guys and they're not trying to tackle the guys. They're not wrapping up. And you miss tackles when you're cold because you're throwing your body at somebody instead of trying to wrap them up. Yeah,
even on the miss with McLaurin, you saw guys just trying to sort of shoulder him down.
Trying to throw like you got to wrap them up.
Yeah. And Jalen Lane, who's a wide receiver, who was their main return guy, he's a slippery player by definition because of the routes that he runs and him having that offensive perspective. And by the way, it wasn't just the 63-yard return in which he scored a touchdown. He had a 20-yard return, if you recall, that set up another Commanders touchdown, which meant that if you looked at starting field positioning, Washington was not put in a situation where they had to go 80-some-odd yards continuously.
No, they had a good field position for most of the game. I think one or two times the Giants put them back, but even when they put them back, they ran the ball very well, got across midfield, changed field position, and one time even scored. So it's like the Giants got a lot of issues right now.
The other thing that I think proved costly is we're highlighting a few different areas was the John Michael Schmitz penalty.
Yeah, I couldn't understand what was going on. I watched, John blocks a guy, Smitty blocked him like 5, 6, 7 yards downfield, and the guy's chirping, and Smitty and him are arguing back and forth, and then Runyon comes over to try to get involved, to protect his guy, and then when Runyon kind of moves away, Schmitty bumps him again. I'm like, dude, it's over. Let it go. Yeah. And he's going to look back at that and be like, oh, what am I doing? So those are penalties that you just can't have.
Yeah, because they always get the last guy that responds
they do.
For the penalty. And the reason why that proved to be costly, and I went over this the other day, they got to the Washington 25-yard line, Howard, after that play. Then the penalty, backs them up. And then what happens, it was a missed-coup field goal.
Yes.
So those 15 yards proved to be extremely costly because now it's a lost possession.
Yeah.
You don't have any points to show from that.
Yeah, and I think that, as they're looking back and starting to think about it, I would expect or hope that the Giants are going over to the stadium and practicing more because the wind is blowing sideways in the stadium, and it's really weird. We're not making an excuse for coup, but it is weird. If you hadn't kicked in the stadium and the wind on one end is blowing one way and it's blowing the other way on the opposite end, I was watching in pregame. I'm like, I hope they don't have to kick the ball. Dude, it's going to be ugly out here.
They can play mind games with you. And the other thing that was in play, they had a new holder in Cameron Johnston because Jamie Gillen was out. But I look back, there were no issues with the process. He caught the ball, got it down quickly.
Exactly. It's just, like I said, that wind. I remember when I played in the old stadium, they would leave the doors open, and we'd come in and practice in the wind just to see what it looked like. The ball, when they throw the passes to you, sometimes they'll dip really fast or they'll rise right before they get you because the wind is blowing so hard.
Sure.
And I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, how is this even possible? We would laugh because it was so funny. And we watched teams come in, and they couldn't catch the ball. Because the ball will be moving all over the place, and you can't simulate it. It's just something that's going on. And the kickers, the punters, the kickers, they would have to be out there. we're going to the stadium. All right, let's go, guys. And then they go in and kick for the day. They wouldn't come back. They wouldn't kick in practice because they're kicking in the stadium. So it was something that was a big difference. And I don't think, I haven't seen it. Maybe they're doing it right now, but I haven't seen them do it yet. And I mean, it's very helpful for them to get accustomed to the wind.
And the Giants have a luxury because you're right by the stadium, right?
Yes,
Most teams,
absolutely.
right, the facility's miles away.
Yes, that's right.
So you got to hop in a vehicle or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
You just walk across the parking lot, and then all of a sudden you take your fair share of opportunities to be able to once again duplicate the feel, and the opponent doesn't have that luxury.
Exactly.
It's an advantage for you.
That's a big thing to do, and they should incorporate it, especially later here in this year, because it's going to be windy and it's going to be cold for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and you got 2 of the next 3 at home.
Yep.
So the Vikings and the Cowboys, what's the common element? They're indoor teams.
Yep, exactly. So if it's really cold on the Vikings, that will be interesting to see how they handle that being outside, even though they're from Minnesota. The Cowboys, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they're kind of in it. They're kind of out of it. They might be out of it by the time they get to us, and they won't have anything to play for.
Well, Philadelphia, if they win Saturday, actually, it's over. So Dallas then doesn't have anything to play for, at least in terms of the standings. Guys, jobs, evaluations, as we talked about, that's a whole other story. And Brandon Aubrey is one of the best kickers in the NFL, though he did miss 2 kicks, which was really out of character for him Sunday night against Minnesota. But you just never know, like you said, the wind, the elements, if there's snow, precipitation, who knows?
I'm not expecting Aubrey to be trying to kick a 60-yarder outside in the cold. That's over with.
Well, because you don't have the luxury of, once again, being indoors. So
Exactly.
it changes Schottenheimer's decision-making and so forth. But Koo, does have the ability to at least get a little bit more acclimated. But I guess my concern going in was new holder. Koo is relatively new, but that went seamless. There were really no problems with that.
I don't think that's a big deal. Like, they practice the holding pretty much every day, several times a day. That's all they're doing in practice, basically. Like, snap, catch down. And the other time he's punting. So, it's not that big of a deal for him.
I think the only thing that we learned from the 2 misses is that every single yard is of utmost importance because of what you're talking about with the win factor. So whether or not you decide to run or pass on 3rd down prior to the field goal, that could come back to bite you. A penalty when you're in great field positioning on the field, that could all of a sudden come back to haunt you. The Giants, and this goes back to your main point, Howard, they're not the type of team that can overcome digging themselves in a hole. Yeah, they're not built that way.
They haven't done it. They haven't done it yet either. So once they do it, it's going to be interesting to see. I just think that they have a lot of good parts. They're missing Scadaboo. They're missing Neighbors, definitely. But that's offense. They're still scoring points. What their problem is how are they going to get better on the defense, and what's going to make them better on the defense is going to be the big question.
And even though Kayvon Thibodeau has been sidelined for 4 straight games, teams were running the football even when Kayvon was on the field.
Yes, they have.
So you can't tell me that he's going to be the savior alone.
But on the plus side, Abdul Carter had a breakout game.
He did.
He got a lot of tackles for loss. He caused fumbles. He even recovered a fumble. I mean, he really got after him. Got his first sack of the season. Played like a pro. That's what we wanted. That's what we were hoping for the whole season. And they had a chance to move him in a couple spots. So he came from the outside. He did okay. They got another defensive end in there, and they put him in the middle to see what happened. He got pressure there. So he's going to become, more and more of the player that we expected him to be. I mean, I think they've taken some time. Some coaches have watched tape with him to help him. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So someone needs to sit there and show you, go through every clip. This is why. This is what we're trying to get. This is what you're looking for. That you should think about this when this happens. That kind of thing. And it showed that they've been working with him and trying to get him up to speed. And it seems like it's taken a long time, but I'm happy to see the kid have a great game like that.
He was a disruptive force from start to finish in that game. What you just hit on, Howard, interestingly, Charlie Bullen, the new defensive coordinator who took over for Shane Bowen, one of the things he mentioned, because there was a lot of talk that Carter had his best week of practice also leading into the game. And he mentioned that they sat him down and they explained Brian Burns is not having a breakout career year also, if you want to at least label it that way, by just luck. He's picking up tendencies from the opposition, which is what you're talking about from studying film. So they're trying to instill in Carter, if you go through that extra film work,
Yes.
you're going to pick up what the offensive linemen are doing and what the opposition does, and that may give you an extra step, which is the difference between getting maybe a swipe of the hand versus you hit the hand, you force the fumble, and you recover it, which is what we saw late in the game.
Well, I think for a lot of young players, you have to learn to watch film. Like I started out probably in college learning to watch film. I learned with Mike Shula was my quarterback, so I'm listening to Shula. He'd go in and I'd walk by the room like, why is he watching film? And I'd go in and sit down with him. He goes, hey, Cross, what's up? I was like, what's up? And he just started showing me, hey, check this guy out. Watch this. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So I started watching it religiously at that point. Once I got to the league, I already knew what I was doing, what I was looking for. The scouting reports were so thorough that we knew, which guy, this guy got a bad pinky. This is what, anything you could think of.
Sure.
They had it in the scouting report. We'd study them religiously. And then on top of that, Coach Pope and Coach Raybon would give me a test on the scouting report and the game plan. And we'd have to testing to see what would happen. They test me with, okay, you're playing the wide the whole game. Okay, now you're playing the move guy the whole game. I'm like, I'm not playing the move guy. Well, you are now. Now you're playing in the third down package. What are you supposed to be doing? I'm like, okay, all right, I got it. So it was pretty interesting to go through it in the study like that.
You're reminding me, and I just looked it up to recall, in the film Invincible. I don't know if you saw that with the Vince Papale story for the Eagles. There's a scene where they're in training camp, and he's rooming with an offensive lineman, and the offensive lineman was explaining to him when the offensive lineman's hands are bent, you see the coloration of the finger, and that should sort of like give you a heads up. So you were reminding me of when you're studying film with Shula, the little things, the nuances of the game.
How wide a guy's feet are, like how he was standing. It was crazy.
And that's, I think, what, once again, registered in the mind of Abdul Carter. And I think, like any player, I'm sure you saw this when you played from teammates, when you all of a sudden get the results on game day, I think it gives you more ammunition to want to delve into the film.
Well, I think that, the way I look at it is that's part of the job. It's a big part of the job. Preparation is what you're looking to do most. Like the game is fun. But the preparation, the practice, the going through the drills, the going through the steps, the maniacal over and over and over thing is a thing that you really, really want to lean into. And if guys aren't doing it, if they're not watching film, if they're not taking film home, if they're not on their iPads or Windows, they're cheating themselves. And that's the easiest way to get out of the league is to not study and not pay attention to your job and your craft.
And that's why I love to listen to the opponent pressers after the game for the very reason you're talking about, because Terry McLaurin, one of the things he was breaking down, and that's why I referenced they designed that play when he scored the touchdown, he said they ran that play multiple times during practice. It wasn't working. They just were not getting the execution. Then they had a film session on Saturday, the night before the game, where all of the offensive personnel sits in together and they go over a lot of the practice film. And McLaurin, he said, the reason why things are not working is because of how I'm running the route. I'm not getting the right push and taking the right lane to get a one-on-one matchup with the safety. They got the look they wanted. He ran a better route. Mariota threw a perfect pass, and the rest is history. You get the touchdown.
It's the old tight end play. Sims threw it to me 1,000 times, Phil, like the out and up. It's all it was. You run it out and up. The safety is watching you. Once you turn out, he starts to break out or come down, and then when you come back up, his feet are in the wrong position, and you're bound to get a touchdown. That is probably the patented red zone play that every team runs, and every receiver wants to be a part of it because you're open almost. There's no coverage that can stop it, basically.
Because Belton went to the left, McLaurin's middle of the field, then all of a sudden he could take an angle to the opposite side, and once again, he was able to bounce off two defenders and get in for a touchdown. But even though, once again, it may be a popular play, it's still a timing situation.
Absolutely. The idea that when you get up the field, you have to know how far up to go before you make your breakout.
Yep.
You got to turn your head and everything and look like you're going out, so the guy will totally turn his eyes to the quarterback. And then when you turn back up, he's not looking at you. By the time he looks at you, you're even with him or past him.
Speaking of offense, one other thing I want to hit on from this last game is the Giants' offense. We've been talking a lot about the defense and special teams before we open up the phone lines and look on some reaction from social media. I thought this was one of the roughest performances, and I'm curious your perspective, Howard, for the Giants' offensive line. They didn't give up a lot of sacks, but Washington got pressure on Jackson Dart. They had 8 quarterback hits. It just felt like he was under duress a lot more than what we saw in recent games. And the unit overall, I'm talking about the Giants' offensive line, clearly is having a strong season.
I think that's a product of Von Miller. I mean, you can say what you want. He's an old guy, whatever.
No,
but
he can still play at a high level.
He's playing at a really high level, and I think our guys are like, okay, so he was just picking and choosing wherever he was. There was there wasn't a lot of. He stayed away from Andrew Thomas. He's like, I'm not going over there. I'm not messing with him,
which is wise.
Yeah, but Luminor did a pretty good job on it. But when it was time for him to like crank it up another level, he would crank it up another level, and it was hard for those guys to contain him.
Well, the other guy that I thought had a monster game was Preston Smith.
Preston
he
had a
was
decent
also
game.
getting
Yes.
up in the interior. And Smith is somebody who left the Commanders, returned.
Yes.
It's almost like, these guys are having a late renaissance between Von Miller and Preston Smith. It's the old school meeting the new school.
Yeah, absolutely. Preston Smith, he did a lot with over Schmitty, and that's kind of where all the punching and
that's true. Extracurricular.
Like everybody gets a little like, if I get my hands on you, dude, you're gonna get it. Like so, that was pretty much where all that came from.
And I don't think the interception, which was rare, it was only Dart's fourth, was a product of the pressure. It was more of, him, and it seemed as if Hyatt were not on the same page, and Mike Sainris still made the lane to get the pick, but it proved to be another costly area of the game because what happened is they had 10 seconds left. He went out, and they got another field goal to pad their lead as a result. So that was a gift of 3 points right at the end of the first half.
Well, you have to remember that ball was thrown to the sideline of the opposing team. I'm telling you, the wind is blowing really like if you haven't been in the stadium throwing the ball or learning, you need to put more zip on it on this side. Some of the balls are rising up. You can see both quarterbacks when they were throwing over there, the ball's getting up out of their hands. You got to spin it to throw it into the wind.
Speaking of old schoolers, the player that I thought made quite the name for himself during the course of this game, former Giant Antonio Hamilton Sr., right? I mean, his coverage was tremendous.
He did a real good job.
And they put him just about everywhere, but he was getting his hands in passing lanes. He was wreaking a lot of havoc against the Giants in this game.
You got to get separation. It can't be like you can't have a guy that's standing beside you. I know you love the 50-50 ball thing, but you can see what 50-50 gets you, right? I tell you, if you're not open, you're not open.
Yeah. No, with more like 60-40 type of thing in favor of the opposition. But they were down. The reason I'm bringing him up is, he's not one of their starting corners. Nope. He's a special teamer, even when he was here with the Giants. But he was on the practice squad, and Jonathan Jones was banged up. He got his number called, and he played lights out, whether or not it was him going up against his former team or where they placed him. But I thought, like, every time Dart seemed to maybe feed it down the field, Hamilton was there to knock the ball away.
Well, he's practiced against these guys, for a while. He had training camp with these guys, and when you have that much time with them, you get to know them. So when you go somewhere else and play against them, you're like, okay, I know what they're going to do. I know what he looks like when he's running his route. I know what he looks like when he's going to break. I even know some of the routes because I practiced against them every day. So that's kind of what they're looking at. You're looking at guys that if they know the routes already, you're going to have a hard time getting away from them.
One other thing I want to hit on with respect to the offense before we wrap up our takeaways here from the game against the Commanders. The Giants didn't lose this game because of one facet, as you and I have been talking about. But when you get the ball first and goal at the 1, okay, and you don't wind up scoring, that's problematic. And that has been an issue with the red zone shortcomings. I would argue it's been a bit of a microcosm for this season, and that was when Dart came out of the game, in fairness.
That's pretty much, that changes everything. If it would have been me, I would have just ran quarterback sneak. I would have just okay, let's get on the center, let's go to run quarterback sneak. And I'm not second-guessing the play calls at all. I'm just saying your quarterback just went out of the game. And they went out of the game because, he went down, and one of the offensive linemen turned around and said, come to – and they ran out to get him, and Dart's like, what are you guys doing?
What's going on, yeah.
They're like,
don't bring attention to it.
Don't, I'm not hurt. Because he was laying down because he was mad because he did.
Oh, well, he's always mad when they take him out of the game.
He's like, he was laying down. No, he was laying down because he was like, you could see him cursing basically because he had a chance if he hands the ball off, they might score.
Sure.
So he pulls it out and then tries to go, and he's like, He's like, oh my God, I gotta you could tell that the little option thing they were doing there, it didn't work out the way he wanted it to.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man. So now he's like taking a second to get up, and then he gets up and he, like, hey, he's like, everybody runs out like, oh no, guys, I'm okay. He goes, no, I'm okay. He's like, well, now you gotta come off the field. And you could tell he was in 25, 30 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't very long because, he wound up once again coming back out for that 4th and goal.
But it's too late then. But, so for me, I would have just, like I said, with Jameis there, I'd like, look, guys, we're gonna go quarterback sneak. You ready? Because I'm not handing the ball off because I don't want to fumble it. I'm just going to tuck it and you get behind me and shove me in. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's what I would have tried to do because I would have been a little nervous because I don't think people realize how cold it is. You're sitting on the sideline. Your hands aren't ready for the ball. The ball's freezing. I'm going to make as few adjustments as possible. I'm going to take the ball. I'm going to try to push it in. And Jameis is a big, strong guy. He may have been able to do it.
Yeah, he's got the frame. Even on 2nd and goal from the 2.
Yeah.
He's got a big enough frame.
Absolutely.
So that was the play when they pitched out to Singletary. He then winds up losing 2. Now it's 3rd and goal from the 4. An incomplete pass to Wan'Dale Robinson, and then Dart comes back in. They intend to go to Robinson again. And Quan Martin, you got to give him credit. He nearly actually picked it off, but he was able to make a recovery, got his hand in that window, and all of a sudden now you have nothing to show for what was a golden opportunity in a drive that was 7 plays, 63 yards, and would have given you a little bit of steam because it was 29-14. And this is still early in the 4th quarter, Howard, we're talking about. You get in there, it's 29-21. Now you got a lot more time on the clock to determine how maybe you're going to tackle the final 7 or 8 minutes of regulation.
The only other thing you could have done is just kick a field goal, which would have not helped you win the game. But you're down you're that close. You really want to get the ball. And I think the rhythm just got really thrown off when Dart went out of the game. And it just, no offense to him, but he goes out of the game. It has nothing to do with him. He just, like I said, gets up a little slow. When he gets up a little slow because he's frustrated, then they're running out thinking he's hurt. He's like yelling at him as he's going out the field. Guys, there's nothing wrong. He's like, "This too late now. You got to come out of the game." And so that's just part of it.
And one thing goes wrong on the first play, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the second play, you lose yardage, and once again, you're digging yourself in a hole, and now you're not in those favorable scenarios
you're
anymore.
Still 2 yards away.
No, which is not overwhelming. No, I'm with you. But I guess the thing is, if you're not comfortable, to your point, giving Winston the ball for a QB sneak, you're now making it a little bit more challenging for yourself because that's no longer an option on the plate. And
Absolutely.
That's what happens.
It's just hard. I don't know, if in the interior line to Schmitz and the 2 guards, they got to figure out a way to be able to be stout in there and give the guy a chance when he gets the ball. Because the pressure came inside out for the tackle on Singletary.
And that was the problematic area. That's why we were talking about Von Miller and Preston Smith all game long.
Yep.
That interior pressure, which is what killed them. And maybe that was part of the thought process why Kafka elected not to go with that, Howard. You may have just answered it.
Yeah, it might have been the thing. But again, you can't unless all 3 guys are covered. That's the play.
No, and I'm with you. It's the sensible move also because I say this all the time. When it comes to red zone plays, the defense is on top of you. You have to be able to run the football because the space to throw the ball all of a sudden is divided in half. It shrivels up. So the good teams who finish in the red zone can pound the football on the ground.
Yeah, and the other thing is you got to, if you're able to run the ball just a little bit, then your play action really works for you when you drop back. That's because you have everybody trying to get close to the line of scrimmage to make sure that you don't get it in the end zone.
They have to respect it.
Yep.
They have no reason to respect it if you haven't proven that you can be effective from that standpoint. I know we're getting some good questions from YouTube. We're going to answer that as we move forward. Let's open up the phone lines here first at 201-939-4513. Lance Medow, Howard Cross with you here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. He's at Howard Cross 87. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. Let's check in with Logan in New Jersey, joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Logan?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, man, what's happening?
What's on your mind?
It's clear that this season was a complete failure. It started when they gave us that schedule. Where do we go for the future? Do we trade back? Do we keep that number one overall pick? Like I said, do we trade back? Do we get bigger assets? Do we look to trade Dexter Lawrence? What do we look to do?
Ooh, trade Dexter Lawrence. That was brutal.
How do we make it so next season Giants fans can have an enjoyable season?
Well, I think that if you do get the first pick in the draft, and I think that teams like the Raiders and other teams that need quarterbacks are going to be really like chumming at the bit trying to get them. They're going to say, well, the Giants aren't going to take a quarterback, so what do we have to give up? I think they could get, a later first round pick plus maybe a second round pick this year. If the quarterback spent like Fernandez, I think it is the guy that's probably going to be the one that's going to go number one out of the quarterbacks.
Mendoza from Indiana.
I mean Mendoza. And if he's the guy, I think that he's a pretty solid quarterback. He's he can run, he can throw the ball. He's pretty smart. So I think that will be the big question. Is he that big of a prospect that teams want him so bad that they're willing to, give up more for him? If he is, and the Giants have the number one pick, then you'll get a couple extra picks out of it. And that's the only real thing to do. As far as trading guys away, and if he was like rated really, really high, like rated like twice as high as Dart, they would draft him and trade Dart. But they'll do anything they can at this point, and I'm not suggesting that they draft a quarterback and trade Dart at all. But I'm just saying they'll do anything they can at this point to get more bodies, on the field. And I think what they're going to need is going to be a receiver that can stand to the other side of Neighbors and cause a problem. I think they're going to need another DB. Believe it or not, and just in case. And I think they're going to need, somebody to stand beside Dexter or somebody else that can bring pressure on the quarterback, because you got to stop the run. They need a run stopper in the middle that's a problem.
They do, and Dexter only having, I think it was 0.5 sacks this year. That hurts.
Yeah, I mean, Dexter's coming off that injury. Not sure he's fully healthy because I can tell, like, some games, like when he gets angry, he'll throw a guy around him, but he's not able to do it every time because whatever he injured last year it was
the elbow.
The elbow, yeah. I don't think he had surgery. So he's like trying to play through it, and I'm like, that's just not the same thing. When you have an injury, especially at your elbow when you're pushing somebody, that's a problem. So he'll be taking a real serious look at that in this offseason.
And Logan, appreciate the phone call. I also think, I'm not saying that the caller was insinuating this, he is on the low side in terms of what he's done in recent years, but you can't bank on Dexter getting 9 sacks a season. I just don't think that's who he is.
I think that is exactly who he is.
Really? You really think he's a 9-sack guy?
I think he's a 9-sack guy. If you watch him, and like I said, if Thibodeau's healthy, if Burns is healthy next year, and Dexter is healthy, and now you can add Carter into the mix, you're going to see him get 9 or 10 sacks. You might see him get more than that because there are going to be some really good interior offensive linemen to stop him. And if you got to try to stop, Carter or Burns or somebody in the middle too, then it becomes a big problem.
Well, and that's, I think, what they envision. I look at even when Dexter was here before they brought in some of these young guys, I just think maybe the ceiling is more in that 6 region for Dexter, regardless of who's around him. I thought the 9 was more of an outlier than the norm, I guess is where I'm coming from.
I think he can get 9 or 10 sacks a year. I think there are going to be some guys that you can just go after, and you can get double sacks just in that game. So that's where I see him. That's how that's how I envision him. I envision him being in tip-top shape. He didn't play as much this year as he did in last year.
Yeah, well, they were taking him off the field and
pitch
everything.
Count.
Yeah,
the pitch count. He's still on the pitch count. So not as many opportunities to get sacks either. So that's the other thing. But I think he's going to get probably double digits going forward, because I think with the way the offense is going to be playing, I think that they're going to be able to do that going forward.
Well, that would be, I think, music to the Giants' ears.
Yes.
If Dexter can get back into that vicinity. I'm bringing up his numbers throughout his career, just to provide some perspective here. So he had the 9 sacks in 2024. Prior to that, he had 1 7.5 season. And then everything was in the 4.5 region, and he was playing consistently 16 games. Yeah. So there really wasn't a year where you could say, oh, well, if he played 4 more games, and the year he had 9, he only played 12 games, which was, once again, to me, more of an outlier. But, if you think everybody healthy, that he can get in that,
everybody healthy,
that would be a pleasant surprise
because
for me.
You can't triple team him when everybody's healthy. Right now, there's like 2 or 3 guys taking shots at him.
Just wanted to piggyback off of the first question, and I know you delved into what the Giants should do. And by the way, the number one pick is still up for grabs. The Raiders game, actually, against the Giants is probably going to indicate who would be in the driver's seat. Tennessee also is in the mix as well. So there's still a little bit of movement to make sense of. But even if they got a top 3 pick, I think your philosophy holds true where the Giants have several needs that they would be in a position, assuming, once again, the new coach and whoever is steering the front office is on board with Jackson Dart, that there's not a need to maybe go in a different direction, then it would make sense, hey, collect as many picks as you can.
That's you need bodies. You need and you need young bodies to go out and get some stuff done. I mean, who knows? Like, if you could be in a position where if you trade back far enough, you could take Julian Love from Notre Dame. And I know people are like, why would you take a running back? I'm like, because Scadaboo's coming off an injury. Like, you gotta have guys.
And also, by the way, it doesn't even mean collecting picks for this year, collecting picks for 2027 too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get future assets. Remember, this is not a 1-year, one-shot deal where only the guys you're bringing in 26 are going to help you.
Yeah, and again, if the guy, like, if he's the guy, the quarterback is the guy. If everyone loves him, after they're scouting him and going out and seeing him, then there are going to be teams that are going to want him. Like, okay, we got to have him. And we definitely got him. Like, the Raiders need a quarterback. Not Cleveland. I think Cleveland's going to wind up sticking with Sedor, but I think there are other teams that definitely need quarterbacks. Like, they're in trouble right now. I'm thinking, you're looking at Cincinnati. Will Joe Burrow be there next year? They might need a quarterback. Like, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I hate to say it, Minnesota needs a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't see them necessarily only going with J.J. McCarthy next season. I think they're going to want another option. Now, they could go the veteran route to maybe bring in somebody. But, yeah, there's going to be always teams. I mean, it happens every year.
Arizona's going to need a quarterback. I mean, Kyle Murray's an interesting little project, but they're going to need a quarterback. So it's some teams that are going to need guys. Forget it. The other team that plays in the stadium, the Jets, need a quarterback. So, yeah, there are teams that need them, and there are teams that with picks that can get them.
Which is why it's valuable for the Giants to be in the position they are. But, once again, I also don't
guaranteed.
know. No, well, because you also don't know if they fall in love with a player, too, that is maybe a non-quarterback, if they're in the top 3. I'm not saying if they're the 3rd overall pick and they love a wide receiver or they love somebody else that the separation, Howard, is dramatic. They may sell themselves on, we want to use the pick.
That's true.
And we don't want to move out. Remember, you have to prepare yourself for that, too. That's why the unknown of who the coach is, because, once again, I'm not saying the Giants are going to go in this direction. It's interesting you brought up Arizona here. Remember, a few years back, they had drafted Josh Rosen. Okay, Cliff Kingsbury becomes the head coach, and he now wants to reunite with Kyler Murray. Okay, because they had history, and they did it. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
How did that go?
Well, that's why we're talking about Arizona needing a quarterback, okay?
Absolutely.
But the point is, when you change the X's and O's in the head coach or whoever it may be, it also could change the thinking of what the current roster looks like. You have to at least prepare yourself for that.
Well, this is what I know. I know that they still need the guys they need. So whoever becomes the coach, he's not going to stray too far from, hey, if I can get a big time, a hunker down guy in the middle of that defense that I know I can count on, play in and play out beside Dexter, I'm going to get that. If I can get, a top receiver, I'm going to go get somebody who can really get some separation and I can throw him the ball and not worry about him not catching it every time. I want that. There are going to be guys that you can get that are going to be like, that's what they're going to be looking for.
Let's head back to the phone lines. Bobby is in New Orleans, joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Bobby?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call, guys.
No problem, Bob.
Long-time Giants fan. I grew up in the state of Rhode Island. I remember watching the Giants every week on national TV from Yankee Stadium. Anyway, I love Jackson Dart. He's basically the face of the franchise right now, and his style of play kind of reminds me of a quarterback back in the 80s who was a good quarterback, but his style of play, his longevity of his career wasn't as long, and that was Jim McMahon. I just hope that Dart takes better care of himself. I know he can make plays running the ball, but he is the face of the franchise, and he was a number 1 pick. So I'm just hoping that because he's being watched. He's already been checked, I think 5 out of 10 times for concussions. And but in general, the way, like the previous caller said, the season is gone where they can't finish. They got some talent on this team. Burns, Wan'Dale Robinson, Dot. They do definitely have some talent. It's just that they just don't know how to close games and play 60 minutes together as a unit. And they've been in several games where they just blown leads in the fourth quarter. Abdul Carter stepped up this week. He had a real good game. And I do have 2 questions for each of you. What is the timetable to hire a new coach with the Senior Bowl coming up in February? And then, of course, you have obviously the draft in April. So what's the timetable for hiring a coach? And if they do have the number 1 pick, guys, would they take Mendoza from Indiana?
All right, Bobby. No, fair questions. We'll let you go on that note. The Mendoza goes back to what we were talking about right before we took Bobby's call, and I was explaining the Cardinals scenario of what they did.
Yep.
And when there's a new coach or a new member of the front office, you never know what their decision-making process is. But I think assuming that they're sold on Dart, and I would say this, during the coaching interview process, and this goes to his second question, they're going to bring in coaching candidates. One of the first questions they're going to ask is, what do you think of Jackson Dart? And how do you think you'd utilize him, and who would be your offensive coordinator? If the coaching candidate says, I'm not a fan of Dart, and I don't envision him being the guy, that's going to give them some thought as to whether or not that coaching candidate makes sense for them to ultimately hire him.
Well, yes and no, and I'll say it this way. I think Jackson Dart's a pretty good quarterback. I think he does a good job, taking care of the ball. The problem he has is that he hasn't learned it since college. He takes on too much contact, and that's something he's going to have to do. And now that they're quote unquote watching him so closely, he's going to have to figure out in his own way. He has in the last game, the last 2 games I've seen him play. He got down, he slid. He gave himself up early when he had to, especially when he dives forward. He's even diving. I'm like, well, you got to remember, he should watch some Eli tape. You can fumble the ball diving forward.
Eli wasn't the most athletic.
Even though they mark you back here, they'll still call it a fumble if you drop it when you hit the ground. So I think that's pretty interesting. But he's taking better care of himself. So that would, so a coach coming in is going to look at that and say, like, hey, look, this kid's got some ability. Do I trust him enough to take care of himself? Is what the coach is going to have to answer, and that's going to be the big thing, because you can't take it out of him. You're not going to coach it out of him, and he'll be around either 10 years or 15 years or 5 years. Because if he keeps getting hit and he keeps getting up slow, they're going to start questioning. He'll go down the path of Tua almost, and you don't want that. You don't want that for the young man.
Yeah, where all of a sudden you're losing your quarterback for 5 to 6 games per season. That adds up. Now
now the other question he had was like, when do you start the process of looking at a coach? They're probably doing it now.
Sure. Well, they have the ability to have a little bit of a head start. But remember, you can only talk to or have preliminary conversations with individuals that are not currently employed by NFL teams.
Right.
You can't talk to anybody within the NFL circle, and you're also limited to talk to playoff team coaches too once the playoffs start. So because the NFL, remember, doesn't want that to become an interrupted phase of the postseason. So the process will begin for the Giants immediately once the season ends. But they're going to be limited in who they can speak to, especially if they're interested in a candidate from a team that is going to make a deep postseason run. That's why.
If a team's going to make a deep postseason run, their first week is a bye week. The 2 top
for teams. Those 2 teams, correct.
You could talk to that coaching staff.
But the teams that are playing the wild card, they're going to be in the mix.
They'll be in the mix.
Yeah. So it's going to vary, and also, once again, the NFL has put rules in place because of announcements and so forth where, it just goes to show you Arizona we're bringing up. We're using the Cardinals as a lot of an example. Jonathan Gannon, who's the current coach, remember, he got hired after the Eagles finished the Super Bowl. So, you may have to wait if indeed you are going after a candidate from a Super Bowl team. But they can have, to Howard's point, they can talk to a Mike McCarthy, for example, right now, because McCarthy's no longer with an NFL team. So they could get feelers out there, but the true heavy lifting would start once the season ends, and then it's going to be a matter of navigating the postseason schedule and who exactly they're going after. So, I mean, to give you a ballpark figure, you're probably looking at mid to late January before the process is fully finalized.
They do the process better than college, so that's the problem.
Without a doubt.
With colleges,
no debate there.
Colleges, they leave high and dry, and in the still of the night, whatever. They're gone, man. So and they're actively negotiating contracts, and people are looking at you like, okay,
you got Wild West.
Yeah, you got to go in every day, like, hey guys, how we doing? Oh, yeah, all right, coach, whatever. I'll see you later, buddy.
Can you imagine if Lane Kiffin was the head coach of an NFL team, and then in week 17 he leaves to get hired by another team, and then
leaves to go to college?
Well, that could very well happen.
And I will say it. I love Saban, but Saban did it to the Dolphins.
I remember that. Yeah.
Saban's like, hey, holla.
See you later. Yeah, absolutely. No, but I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with you.
I'll be right back.
There's no reason why college football can't make a tweak, but we'll have to save that for another show in terms of the inner workings. But no, the NFL does it the best, to your point.
They take care of it, yes.
They basically say the season ends, then the process begins. We're not all of a sudden allowing guys to move when the season is still being played out.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
The ownership did a good job, and the front office did a good job of making sure that never happens.
I want to mix in some social media questions that we're getting to and appreciate those who may not have an opportunity to call in. And these are two interesting questions regarding the active roster. So Bruce asks, what's going on with Turbo, Dante Miller? Why has he not gotten a chance? And then combined with this, Tom writes, why isn't Smith-Marset returning kicks, punts? And this came up because, once again, there were injuries to their returnmen. Gunnar Olszewski specifically was inactive because of the concussion he suffered against New England. And the Giants elected to stick with the personnel that they had been utilizing in his absence. So you had Javon Holland returning punts and Singletary and Deonte Banks on kickoffs. And I got a lot of questions on social media pertaining to this. First of all, Smith-Marset has not been active all season long.
No.
So I don't think it should stun anyone, Howard, that they elected not to call him up when we're this late into the season in Week 15. Turbo also was not called up when Tracy got banged up and when Scadaboo, who you were referencing, got hurt. So also, not stunning that now we're moving the calendar to Week 15 and you don't see them move those players up. Well, if it didn't happen earlier when there were legitimate injuries where they could have played a role, then don't be stunned or surprised. I think the reason why these guys are not getting opportunities is more of the game of math, Howard, that goes on game days. It may be easy to the naked eye to say, okay, a return man is down, so we're going to call up a return man. A running back is down, so we're going to call up a running back. But the coaching staff and the front office can't think like that. For example, Dexter Lawrence was on the injury report this week.
Yep.
So they may have said to themselves, we may need an extra defensive lineman because what happens if Dex re-aggravates the injury? Also, Nunez Roches was out. Okay, so you were down one guy, but the other guy was sort of iffy.
Yep.
So you have to prioritize, do we call up Smith-Marset?
And Thibodeau's out.
And Thibodeau, correct. Yep. So do we call up Smith-Marset, who only is going to play special teams for us, right? We're not going to give him offensive opportunities. He's going to be a one-trick individual, for the lack of a better phrase. Whereas if we call up a defensive lineman, he may be utilized everywhere on special teams, on defense, and Holland can already kill two birds with one stone.
Yes.
He's going to be our safety, so now we're just going to tell him, all right, fair catch it, and don't try to mix things up.
And he's returned before.
He does. He have experience. It was maybe 2-3 years ago, but he does have experience, 100%.
And the other thing is that you had to use one of those call-ups for a kicker, a punter. So you have to have that guy. You can't just say, all right, hey, dart punt. If you could, that'd be much easier, but you can't do that. So you're using one of your guys you're bringing up as a kicker. You're bringing him up and that as a punter, and that kind of steals away from it also.
Yeah, so it really is, for those of you, and I've received a lot of questions, and they're all valid questions, but I think what gets missing from this conversation is what Howard and I are talking about. There's other positions unrelated to the running back and the return game that they have to prioritize God forbid there's injuries and they're losing integral pieces, whereas a return man is only going to be one role in a game, and you don't even know how many times you're going to field a punt, right, based on the flow of the game. So you're putting a lot of priority in that, whereas Singletary, Banks, and Holland are already on the roster playing their primary positions, and you could just throw them out there. And one other thing I wanted to throw out, Howard, then there's the debate about, well, do you want to expose them to injury? My comeback is Antonio Brown for the Steelers. He returned punts religiously, and I didn't hear anyone go to Mike Tomlin, Mike, what are you doing, when he was one of their most dynamic return men?
It's football. I always tell people that it's football. Stop complaining about should he be or he's going to get hurt. Like, it's football. Yeah, you can get hurt, but you're playing not to. You're playing to, win games and try to get the best out of your players.
Without a doubt. So I hope that answered a few of the questions that we had up on social media. And please bring that to the table, because we certainly love answering some of those questions pertaining to the X's and O's and the ins and outs of the decision-making process for game day management. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We got Todd in Hackettstown joining us here on BBKL.
Okay.
Yeah. What's happening, Todd?
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the call. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for giving us a ring.
So my question today is, what are we doing with Wan'Dale? Because for the first time that I've been expecting to see what he's been bringing to the table is actually manifesting right now. He's able to take the top off the defenses, and I want him back on the team next year, but I think we're going to have to pay too much of a price now. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on where we're headed with that and, what we can do about that.
Yeah, is Wan'Dale a 2-year contract?
Wan'Dale is a scheduled free agent after this year.
That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough, man. I have no idea how they're going to incorporate Wan'Dale into the thing if Wan'Dale wants to stay. But you got to also remember there'll be guys that might be leaving the receiving room that make sure they might need him even more, so they may be able to pay him. Yeah, so I have no idea how they're going to.
I can't see Hyatt coming back at this point, so I feel like we're going to need something, especially like you guys were talking about earlier, where drafting a second receiver, we may have the guy already in Wan'Dale, is my thought.
Well, that you can't have enough of them. Let's put it like that.
That's for sure.
You can't have enough of him, and he's out there right now by himself. And once Neighbors come back, if he comes back as himself, he will, demand the ball a lot. Not demand like him demanding it personally, but just his ability alone will demand the ball. People will be looking out for him, and Wan'Dale will have more of an opportunity under that circumstance. Where would he go if he left? That's the question. Who's going to pay him that kind of money? Because people have to evaluate you on what they see. If they see him, 1,000-yard receiving, maybe they do want him. But Wan'Dale's a small guy. Do you trust him?
I see it coming, Howard. He's going to command some money because he's balling now, and he's picking the right time to do it.
Yep. Well,
we see what we have in him, and he's a very valuable piece going forward, I think.
Okay.
Well, all it takes is one team. So,
yes.
All you need is one team.
Right.
I think you got to protect yourself with Neighbors coming off an injury. I don't think you can take that for granted. So, that perhaps could swing the Giants more towards valuing Wan'Dale Robinson. But, Todd...
His agent is going to be valuing
and that gets to my next point, Howard. I'm glad you went there. I mean, I think, Todd, the other way that you have to look at it is, and I use this phrase all the time, it takes two to tango. So, Wan'Dale Robinson is scheduled to hit free agency for the first time. A lot of these players don't have that luxury. They may say, listen, I want to return, but I also want to get some feelers and see what the market has to offer. And the Giants can't deprive him from doing that. He has every right to do that as a free agent, unless, of course, they give him the franchise tag, but it's pretty costly for a wide receiver. So I'd be a little bit surprised if they go down that road. And remember, we also don't know, what the decision-making process is going to be like once this season ends. So, there's a little bit of the unknown in terms of the direction of this franchise from that standpoint.
I can see the franchise tag.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that.
But remember, for wide receivers, it's a little bit up there in comparison to other positions.
What's the other one? What's the other one? Not franchise. What's the other tag they can put on you?
The transition tag, where then you allow the player to go out and then he can see what the market. It's like the best of both worlds. And then there's the exclusive and non-exclusive franchise tags, where also you allow them to negotiate with other teams. But remember, if a team's got to give up 2 first-rounders, highly unlikely they're going to do that.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that the Giants could go. I would agree with you. I think they certainly need to value his contributions in the wake of Neighbors' injury. But, at the other side of the thing is, as Howard mentioned, if they get a top 3 pick, and I was saying, they move down or they love a wide receiver, they're going to be in a position where they could bring in a pretty high wide receiver into the roster who would then be on a rookie contract and not be as cost effective in re-signing a veteran free agent who's Wan'Dale Robinson in that regard.
They'll know more about that probably mid-February when they're going to come by. Yeah, they'll see who's out there, who came out, who's really showing them something. Somebody comes out and runs a 4.3 40 and he's 6'4" and runs great routes. That'd be a hard guy to pass up.
All right, Todd. Yeah.
Well, that's for sure. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate taking the call.
Absolutely appreciate the phone call. And I think a big reason why Wan'Dale Robinson also is having a breakout year is just how they're utilizing this year, Howard.
Well, they've used it in the same way all the time. It's just that, again, Neighbors is not on the field. So when Neighbors is not on the field, you need somebody to be that go-to guy, and he's been very dependable catching the ball. He hadn't had a lot of drops, and when you're that dependable, they're going to be looking for you the whole time. And it's hard to cover a guy that size, believe it or not, because once he goes in motion and starts up the field, you have to get to him and be close to him. And if you're not bumping him off the line, you're going to have a hard time covering him.
One other thing that I just wanted to clarify, the caller brought up Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt is not in the expiring year of his rookie contract, just so that everybody understands. Yeah. He still has 1 year left. He was a third-round pick in 23. Now, that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a roster spot, but the point is they don't have to do anything to his contract. He still has that last year, depending on where they want to go. I just wanted our audience to understand that because it sounded as if he was also a scheduled free agent. Mike is in Florida, and he joins us here on BBKL. What's happening, Mike?
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. This is a defensive-oriented question. Okay. But our defense has had 3 different defensive coordinators in, let's say, the last year or so. What Howard is probably the best one to answer this. What impact does that have on the learning curve of our second and third year players? Because each one of the coaches has a slightly different bent, philosophy, orientation. Do you think that's been a real negative influence on the way our defense has played? And I'll take that off the line, guys.
All right, Mike.
All right, okay. I think, yes, it could affect the first, second, and third year guys, but the deal is that the guys that have played for 3 years, once Wink left, there was a new defensive coordinator in Shane, and when Shane comes in, he's running a system. Now, the new guy is basically running the same system.
Yeah, you're not changing the scheme.
And you're not changing anything. So that's not an excuse for the guys. And guys like Tyler Newman and the young guys that are playing, they are still playing at a high level. So I don't think it's really affected them. I think that, again, the biggest problem that the Giants have had is they're having a hard time stopping the run. They're running up the middle right at them. So it's they'll get to the edge sometimes and test the edge to see if they can catch Thibodeau's not out there, so we're going to try to test Carter so we can get him to come inside or we can get outside of him. But that's not the case. They're running up the middle mostly, and if they go outside, it's just sparingly.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose. An excellent point. I think to answer Mike's question, if this question was posed last year, I think there's more to talk about because you went to a completely new scheme. You went from Wink to Shane. Howard, as he mentioned, Charlie Bullen's a new defensive coordinator, yes, in title, but Charlie has not revamped the scheme. He may be calling the game a little bit differently here or there, but he's not all of a sudden instilling a 3-4 as opposed to a 4-3 or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
so
it's not like they're changing coverages and everything. He does blitz a little bit more. I think that's one of the things that you can see him doing. You see a lot more of Bobby Okereke. He's coming up the field, coming through the middle. You see the guys, you see Burns rushing in the middle sometimes, and Carter rushing in the middle sometimes. So he has a few more toys to play with, but outside of that, they're still running the same plays they've always been running. The same coverages, the defense is in it. It works for most of the game. It's just when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's why I would not tie in it's detrimental to the personnel at this stage. Once again, last year, early in the season, based on more man-to-man, more zone, or whatever it may be, you could argue, it's an adjustment period, right, for the secondary players. But at this point, I don't know, Mike, if I would say the game of revolving door at the defensive coordinator has been that problematic for the personnel. Let's squeeze in one more caller here before we wrap up. Wilson is in Roxbury with us. What's happening, Wilson? What do you got for us?
Hey, Lance. Hey, Howard, man. Long time no talk, man.
Hey, brother. How we doing?
To you guys. I'm all right, man. Hey, listen, real quick. If the Giants have the number 1 pick, right, and they don't pick this kid Fernando Mendoza, they'll regret it the rest of their lives.
Really? You think he's that much better than...
Wait. Howard, listen. This kid, Jackson Dart, has Danny Cannell written all over him.
Ooh.
All over him. Howard, I've been watching football a long time, man. I'm not going to tell you, obviously, you know more than me. But this kid, they've been shoving this kid down every Giants fan's throat because they have nothing else to sell. If they think that this kid is your face of your franchise, they are out of their minds. And another thing, real quick before I go, if somehow they're contemplating keeping Joe Shane as the GM, they're also out of their mind. When the season is over, right, against Dallas, they have to call the biggest pest company in the world, and they have to fumigate from the rooftop all the way down, Howard. There's no other way, man. No assistant head coaches. Howard, you can't patch the wall anymore, Howard. You got to build a new wall. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about, man.
I hear you.
This, Howard, come on. I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, man, but you can't do that. You let this general manager and this head coach draft a quarterback after a 3-win season. They had no business being here from the beginning. So everything has been done backwards. You got to draw a line and say, look, we can't do this anymore the way we do. You have to build a new wall, Howard. No more patching the wall, Howard, or we're going to have the same conversation next year, Howard. And I don't want to go through that anymore, man. Giants fans, we need a little break, man. And again, Merry Christmas to you, Lance, to you, Howard, to Johnny, to Paulie, to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's it, man.
All right, Wilson.
Let's go, Giants.
Same to you.
Make the right move this time, please. Please make the right move.
All right, Wilson.
Thank you.
We'll let you go on that note. Keep in mind, normally when a new coach comes in, they tend to turn over the staff. I mean, I want to think Brian Daboll kept Thomas McGahee, Howard. Outside of that, he brought in pretty much all new assistants.
Yes,
so,
he did.
I mean, that tends to be the nature of the beast. Why? Because a head coach is going to bring in guys he trusts and knows. He's not going to inherit individuals that he hasn't worked together with. There are some exceptions here.
Unless there's a guy like the offensive line coach here.
Like Carmen Brasillo you're talking about.
Boy, he's a good offensive line coach. He really, really coaches those guys up. Now, that would be a guy that if somebody came in, and I'm not saying all the other coaches are bad, but like Carmen his group has shown the greatest improvement. That's how I would look at it.
And that's also another reason why you should listen to some recommendations from maybe the previous regime, members of the front office, to at least interview those guys.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you got to hire them, but you should at least talk to them. I know Pat Shurmur had done that, a few other previous head coaches. It's natural to at least listen to speak to them.
Hear what they're doing and how they're doing. Absolutely.
Especially if the production, to Howard's point, has been consistent. All right. That is going to wrap up Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, it is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. We are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Howard, always a pleasure going back and forth.
All right, brother.
Absolutely. Look forward to doing it again shortly. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, as the entire podcast network is on Giants.com, the mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. For Howard Cross, I'm Lance Medow signing off here. We'll speak to you on Wednesday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.